I come from a sport background, air quotes for a reason, which is why I can make the statement that's currently over my head in the title. There's no fourth wall here, so you guys can see it just as well as I can. Yeah, esports are going to ultimately fail. Now that the pause has been left so all the fanboys could rage quit, now we can talk. Let's back up just a second here. Esports is a short form of electronic sports, and this is the competitive side of gaming. Esports are often team-style games like League of Legends, Dota, World of Tanks, Call of Duty, and so on, but being the high level of gaming, there's a lot of prize money, sponsorships, and this public performance of the game in a sports setting. Now, I guess the concept really isn't anything new. You can ask any arcade kid and they'll tell you all about high scoreboards and free greasy pizza once a month, but what is new is the money being thrown at it. There's over $10 million in the prize pool at the International right now, and in South Korea fans fill stadiums just to watch esports, and there are millions who watch over live streams. This is worldwide. And yet, in this video, I'm making the statement that esports are going to fail. And you might say, well, how could that possibly be? I mean, $10 million, that's got to have a lot of staying power, right? Well, if that were true, then the XFL would still be on the air. 70 million bucks. For the moment, I'm going to ignore a lot of things here, like an argument whether video game players are athletes or not, because, well, then we have to dissect what an athlete is. I mean, is a NASCAR driver an athlete? How about a rodeo clown? How about, well, these guys? What the hell is this called anyway? Okay, I'm an American, there is no way I'm going to try to even pronounce that. Well, instead, I want to narrow things down to this video to 3 components of accessibility that all successful sports have. And I'm going to explain where esports fails to deliver on these 3 points. Now, this is by no means the Achilles heel of esports, and I don't want to present it as such, but it's probably the most simple way that everyone can relate to in order to explain what my main point is. So let's start here. Okay, yeah, I swapped cameras on you guys because it's the only day I have to film. It's supposed to rain. It's the only camera I have that's even vaguely waterproof. Alright, enough excuses. Let's talk about hard infrastructure. Hard infrastructure, for the sake of this discussion, is going to be the physical locations that you have to play the given sport. And in this case, baseball. Really nice baseball. We're in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and they have really nice baseball and softball diamonds like this. Okay, but I can take, from where we're standing right now, I can drive in 5 minutes in almost any given direction. I can show you more baseball diamonds. I can show you a football pitch for either sense of the term. I can show you tennis and basketball courts. I can show you a sled hill that allows skiing and snowboarding. I should know, I've done it there. And I can show you a skate park. You know, that skate park is probably more impressive to me than it is to you guys, but I digress. Point is that this hard infrastructure, it's here, and this is government supported. Anybody that wants to, well, you got to ask for permission for this particular facility, but anybody that wants to can come out here and play baseball or softball right here. But just as important as what's here, what isn't here? You don't see a big pile of baseball bats. You don't see a big bucket of baseballs. You can't just go right back into the building back there and put on your uniform. No. That's actually the second part of this discussion, but I need to handle that somewhere else than here. The second part we'll be tackling is the minimum cost of admission. Every sport, you need to somehow have the minimum gear to play that given sport, and in most cases, it's just a ball. Now before you argue, you need a hoop, a backboard, flat area, no. Assuming the infrastructure exists, all you need is a ball. Now some sports, of course, you do need a little bit more, like tennis, you need a racket and a ball. Baseball, you need a bat and a ball. Cricket, you need patience and tea, apparently. And this, well, it needs a pole. Now this is the minimum price of admission to play the sport that you want to. This is the least amount you need to spend to play the game in question. The third factor I'm going to talk about is the price per game. A lot of sports have things that you need to replace every game. For example, in every shooting sport you need to buy ammunition, and usually targets. Some ammunition doesn't need replacing, like arrows, but you'll need to replace them eventually. So this is the wear and tear on your equipment, because nothing lasts forever. So the price per game, it might be pennies, it might be dollars. So let's see, how does gaming fare? Well, let's take this in order. How's the infrastructure for competitive gaming look like? In America, pretty miserable. I will grant that in some countries there are PC cafes that you can get high-speed access, but there aren't many in the US, and even then, they're not publicly accessible. You gotta pay to access it. Okay, yeah, sure, I could probably go get Wi-Fi, but would you really play competitive Dota on that? Well, it would make TeamSpeak a lot more interesting, to say the least. The point is that there are no analogs to a public park in esports. Now, of course, this is assuming that the internet resources are even there. I've got a friend in New Zealand who pays for bandwidth used, and when he plays an MMO or when he streams, it's hell. especially when his broadband suddenly gets throttled to nil when he hits his monthly limit.
So, point blank, there is no supported infrastructure for esports. Let's say I want to play something like, I don't know, a MOBA of some kind. How would I go about doing that? Well, I'd log into their server and start playing, right? Okay, not only is this a single point of failure issue, but this also means that I have to have access to the central hub or I can't play. In a sports term, that's disastrous.
Well, let's talk football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. I want you to imagine that anyone who wanted to play football or even practice playing football has to secure a live stream connection to FIFA. Not only would this be impossible, but it would also be insanely unmanageable. Esports have to be played on a central server where the powers that be can tightly control everything, and this is counterproductive to how real sports work. A lot of sports are worldwide because the players are allowed to flex the rules to fit local constraints. For example, my old neighborhood. We used to play baseball in the street in the cul-de-sac, and first and third were uneven cracks in the curb, and home and second were street cracks. Forgive the photo, Google Maps has its limits.
And honestly, we could repeat this for almost any given sport that's out there, at least the successful ones. Do you have a big flat area and a way that you can mark kind of like a goal? Congratulations, you've got a soccer pitch. Do you have a wadded up piece of paper and a wastebasket? Congratulations, you can play basketball. Do you have a flattened soda can and a couple of sticks? You can play hockey. Pretty much every successful sport is like that, and I cannot emphasize how detrimental it is if there's only one way to play and one place to play any given sport. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's go to the second part. What's the cost of entry look like?
Since most esports are going free to play, you don't gotta buy that, which is good. But let's say you wanted to get into casual League of Legends play. Well, the computer, $550 minimum. Okay, before you start jumping all over me and screaming about kit bashing a box, okay, not everybody's gonna have the same technical skill that you have in building a PC, so they're gonna do what everybody else does when they're getting started. They're gonna go to their local big box mart, they're gonna buy a PC with the minimum requirements to play the online games. And if you don't want to get laughed out of the game, well, then you got to sink, gosh, easily about $1,500 into it. Well, you got to get a processor, a good card, mechanical keyboards, gaming mice, right? But let's stick to the minimum specs. You can probably get away with a $550 system and just hobble yourself severely on minimum settings. Now let's compare that to other sports. $15, you're playing hoops. Now assuming the infrastructure is there, you got it. Well, hell, you can use any ball if you want to. If you have a kickball and some space, you can play damn near anything.
Some people really get hung up on this argument that you need all this gear to play, and it makes it more convenient, and there's some sports that I wouldn't play without at least safety gear. I wouldn't hand a bunch of foils off to a bunch of kids and say, go have fun fencing. But, okay, the best anecdote I have for this is actually my dad's friends. See, all my dad's friends, you can bend your fingers back like about this far. They can bend theirs like way far back, like unnaturally far. And when I asked them why, they said, well, they used to play stickball in the streets in New York as kids, and they didn't have gloves. This is the ball that they use, and that's basically a hard rubber ball about the size of a baseball. Pow!
That brings me to the price per game. In esports, it's pretty steep. You have to pay for internet access, the modem rental or ownership if you go that route, and you got to get hardware because, well, that degrades over time, and they keep on making games that you require. Okay. Yeah, the costs per game are actually pretty small, but when your keyboard goes down and you need to replace it, then it gets pretty pricey. But the games themselves, well, you remember how I said they're free to play? Okay, let's take a look at a game like, I don't know, Killer Instinct. It's indeed free. Oh wait, you only get access to like one character. Well, how do you unlock them? Do you have to play in a campaign mode? Oh, DLC. Well, they justified it by saying this.
But on top of that is we wanted to give like the casual player and people that are kind of intimidated by fighting games like the opportunity to play without feeling like, hey, I had to fork up full price in order to pay. But then on top of that, you're like, hey, you know what? I got to play this game, I really like it, but you know what? I don't want to get those other characters. I have no interest in those. So you also have the option to purchase those characters without buying the full game. Now, obviously, the full game would be more like, you know, a flat rate. We don't expect people to pay into the hundreds of dollars just to play the full game. Our goal is to not nickel and dime people, it's to grow a community, so.
Yeah, we know how this works. You can't be a specialist. You need to play all the characters, so of course you're going to buy them all. And as they add characters over time, you need to buy those too, so the price per game technically increases over time. People have made arguments that League of Legends is pay to win too because they do similar in that you can buy access to specific champions. I think it's like, what, 300 bucks if you get them all on sale over time? Now, this isn't counting consumables in these games either. World of Tanks is the most blatant offender with their gold rounds, and they are on record by saying that they feel that clan and tournament players should buy gold rounds, but this kind of kicks the price per game up significantly when you realize that you're throwing anywhere from $1 to $5 an hour in virtual ammunition.
So let's summarize, shall we? The infrastructure doesn't really exist, the price of admission is incredibly high, and the price per game is actually really high. What we have is virtual regatta racing. It's a sport for rich people or for people who are being bankrolled by rich people. And if you're not on their level, if you don't have the right equipment, well, they don't want you, they just want you to get out of there. You know, actually, there's another meaning to infrastructure that we really need to talk about, and it's kind of important.
Infrastructure also relates to people. Someone has to build that skate park and maintain it, someone has to mow the grass to the baseball diamond, and more importantly, someone needs to be willing to play the sport. And right now, esports are a punchline. You do something awesome in a game, you say, hey, look at me, I'm MLG! It's a point of mockery in the fighting game scene the last time I checked, and players of MOBA, they mock the pro scene openly on live streams and so on. The player base is actively against esports, and the powers that be are basically forcing it on them. And here's where I start to pull rank. I've seen this movie before. Esports are following the paintball history I already lived through almost move for move. And I've seen what happened there. The paintball industry pushed forward with their agenda, they alienated their core players, the core players disowned the sports side of things, and the entire thing pretty much collapsed.
And that's what I see happening in video games right now. You've got all these producers, you've got all these industry people who have these lofty goals and these ambitions, and they're saying, yeah, we're willing to burn the recreational players, but you're going to join us in the dream whether you want it or not. Which actually kind of leads to a bigger question. Are esports even worth it? We'll tackle that one next week. And look, I gotta give you some reason to tune back in next week, right?